Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Share Your Story with Ellie. I'm your host, Ellie B, and I am so glad you are here. Today on the show, you get to meet the incredibly talented Lyndsey Misenar. Lyndsey is a phenomenal wedding photographer who travels all around the world to document love. Her passion is to capture the intangible feelings between a couple in photos so that they can fully revisit their best day over and over again. Her unique approach to developing a friendship with her couples, as well as investing herself in their story, creates magic behind the lens. She also runs a sales team for the skincare company Nu Skin, which I proudly use myself, and she is such a fun follow on Instagram. Lyndsey is also based here in Jacksonville with her fiancé Brad and their fur baby Ollie. She and I met in high school dance classes and bonded over our love for boys, hip hop, and constant chatting. We haven't had a chance to catch up in ages, and we really could have gone longer than we did, honestly, hours longer. So today you'll hear part one of our conversation. Lyndsey and I talk about how she followed God's nudges into photography, what makes her work stand out from others, her intentionality behind every photo, and the importance of knowing your core values as an artist and also as a business person. I know you're going to learn so much from Lyndsey, and I cannot wait to hear your takeaways. Without further delay, here's part one of my conversation with Lyndsey Misenar.
Man, I wish I could pray like that. I was like, yes. Yeah, Lord. Amen.
Mary Claire and I pray every morning together.
Oh my
and
gosh.
It was originally her idea, which is the sweetest thing. But the first probably 3 weeks, she'd be like, we could pray together in the mornings. Then she'd be like, so will you pray? And I'm like, what about this like togetherness thing? What if you prayed? And she's like, I don't know. It just doesn't hit the same.
She's like, dear Lord, I love this day. Thank you. Yes. And you're like, let us bless and be flourished. I'm like, how did you know these words? I love it. I felt a tear come down my face. I was like, yes.
Listen, it's because I've got a lot of practice.
It's great.
Praying my little heart out for so many different freaking subjects. But it's, yeah. Okay. Hi. Welcome to Share Your Story with Ellie, Lyndsey.
I am so excited.
So much fun. The thing about us, we're going to yap. We're going to talk. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the longest episode ever because rarely do we even need a topic to be able to talk for an hour straight.
I know, seriously.
So I'm excited.
And we haven't caught up in a while. So
exactly. Lots of ground to cover.
Yeah, lots of ground to cover, but it's going to be great.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. So for the audience, I would love for you to give just a little bit of context about who you are. Yes, the basic stuff, name, where you live, what you do, that kind of stuff, but anything you want to add that just kind of makes up Lyndsey.
Yeah. So hi guys, I am Lyndsey. I am a full-time wedding photographer. I also, funnily enough, run a sales team for skincare, which is totally, I know that sounds very different from photography, but they do combine together. And it's been so much fun. I live in Florida. I have a fiancé, which is wild. I'm getting married next March, which is so fun being on the other side of things since I do weddings, as my job. And I have the perfect son. He's a fur baby and his name is Ollie, and I am obsessed with him.
Could not agree more. I look at Annie every single day. You are the most perfect creature to ever exist.
I
on
literally
the face of the planet.
I feel like I birthed him. I'm like, you are my child.
Every time you post about your travel anxiety because of Ollie, that is the same thing I feel every single time. And it does not go away.
No. It's so funny because whenever I get to my destination, I'm like, oh, okay, it wasn't that bad. But it's the build up before. I'm like, am I really going to leave him? I can't do that.
Oh, it feels like betrayal. Does Ollie get upset?
Yes. As soon as he sees the suitcase, I am just like, I will quit. I won't do any of this. It's fine. I can just stay home with you. So I can't imagine what it's like when I have human babies.
I 100% think that all the time because my camera roll, if it is any evidence over my sweet fur baby, which like you said, she's a part of me. Mm-hmm. So I cannot imagine what it's like to have your own DNA in something else. people
Goodbye.
better watch out.
Yeah.
I really think that that's part of the training that the Lord's doing of like, we got to work out some of this stuff, what it's like to let go a little bit, to surrender. Because
no, I found out that I'm a helicopter mom through this experience of being a dog mom. Like, I'm like, I see every worst case scenario happening, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be the parent that is just not fun. Like, Brad will be the fun parent. I will be the paranoid helicopter mom, like, for sure. So I need to, like, you know, calm down before I have kids, which I don't know if that will happen, but
I know. I feel that. Literally yesterday we were playing with the toy and Annie wiped out really hard. And I was like, I think we need to take a break. I'm not sure.
The hospital.
Yeah. I'm like, do they offer at-home x-rays? Like, what's the scenario?
I love it. I love it.
But I can't help it. I mean, I just love her so much. I look at her all the time and I'm like, you just have to live 70 more years. And I put it in her brain because I'm like,
it's going to happen.
Will. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I got really into last year, which I feel like it may have been disproven, but there was Guinness World Records over a dog that lived to be like 31 or something. And I immediately was like, this is Annie's destiny. She will beat this world record.
This is what I have designed for you, says the Lord.
Thus saith the Lord.
Thus saith the Lord.
I'm 100% putting that on her. And she looks at me like, okay, I heard you.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, I love it so much. Well, that's not the only thing we relate to. We go all the way back to middle school, high school, and our first love combo, that's a weird phrase, is dance. Our love for dance and laughing and talking, but especially dance. And that feels like ages ago. No,
it literally, like, it almost feels like we're not talking about us because it was just so long ago.
Totally agree.
Now I feel like I can't even bend over, like, my back hurts. And, like, how was I, like, I can't touch my toes, like, without, like, creaking a little bit.
But also, speaking of backs, you also had such a traumatic back experience starting
from dance.
And starting in high school, right?
Yeah. So, which is funny because my back injury led me to photography, which is wild. So I hurt my back in dance. It was like, I don't know, like I hurt it, and then I didn't really get x-rays done or anything like that. I just always knew that I had back problems.
Right.
And then turns out years later, I was like going for these dance competitions and made it to finals. Everything was like set stone. It was great. And my trainer put me into a back bend and I like felt a pop. And I went to the finals, could barely do anything, like could not kick, could not do anything. And I was like, I think my dance career is over. Like, this is the worst feeling ever. And at that time, you know, I was like coming out of college. All of my friends were married, you know, or like some of them, because I went to school at Stanford in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah.
So like Southern Baptist, everyone's getting married real young, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
And then I come back to Jacksonville and like all my friends were dating, you know, somebody. So they're like getting engaged, you know?
Yep.
And I had no idea what I was doing with my life. Like I wasn't dating anyone. And I just thought, well, I love dance. Like, let me just see what this is like and do a career with this. And then I got hurt and it required back surgery. And so that was probably like the lowest point of my life because I went from like not really knowing what I'm doing, but I was like, whatever, like I'm following some sort of path.
Sure.
To everything just stopped. Like I'm home. I had to learn how to walk again. I was like back in my parents' house. You know, after surgery, they say your pain level is supposed to go down. Mine went up. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. So it was like a 2-year journey of healing, of just like getting my pain level down. And during that time, literally like the only thing that brought me joy was taking photos of like my dog. It was like, that was it. My parents, like I never thought I'd be like a photographer. Like I
Mm.
never looked at my life like, oh, I'm going to be a photographer. But when I look back, it's so wild how like the Lord was like giving me little nudges throughout my
Yeah.
life. Like I was always the friend that had a camera. Like
Yep.
all the vintage like digital cameras that are coming back around. Like, yeah,
Right.
your girl had that way
Yep.
back in the day.
Yep.
And I was like always the one that was like wanting to capture the moment. Um, I loved editing. I even took a photography class in high school
Yeah.
just because I wanted to get an easy A,
Yeah.
but I ended up loving it. It was film photography, and we had to do like a dark room and everything. And
Oh yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I loved that. And so my parents had like gotten me, you know, just like a Rebel camera. It wasn't even like a full frame or anything like that. And I just was like taking photos of everything that I could. And it was the
Mm.
only thing that really brought me joy. Um, and like, long story short, all of a sudden I just kind of woke up one day and I was like, I wonder if this is something that I want to, go
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
And I was following, because at that time I was taking photos for an influencer. So I was like, very much like in the influencer blogger world.
Yes. Yes.
And there was an influencer who was like one of the first influencers.
Yep.
Um, she Happily Gray. I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys remember
Yeah.
her, Happily Gray Mary. I followed her and I loved her photos.
Yeah.
And I was like trying to be like that photographer for the influencer I was working for.
Yeah.
And she ended up promoting that she had this photo workshop going on in Utah, and it was like going to be fashion, it was going to be weddings, it was going to be in high sun, it was going to be inside. And at this time, like I'm still shooting on auto. So I was
Right.
like, okay, well, if I'm interested in this, let me go out to Utah and just see what this is about. And that way, like I get to meet somebody that I look up to. And it will just be a fun experience. So I went out to Utah and I left there being like, I am going with everything I have in me. Like, I'm going
Mm.
towards wedding photography. Because
Yeah.
it's so funny, because one of the things that she spoke about was like, everybody was trying to be a wedding photographer, but not everyone necessarily should be. And
Yep.
I totally get that, because like
Yeah.
it is a beast. Weddings are a beast. You have to have the personality for it. You have to be able, it's almost like you have to be able to adapt to any situation,
Right.
because anything can go wrong at any point in time.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to like deal with different, personalities. And so it's not just taking photos of love. Like if it were, amazing, but it's not.
Yes.
There's so many other things, like factors that go into it. But when we were taking photos of like a model, and it was just editorial shoots. And I was like, oh, this is fun.
Right.
And then we were taking photos of a couple, and I just came alive. I was
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, I literally get goosebumps. I'm like, I just love capturing like a connection
Yes.
between people. And so I was like, nope, this is what I want to do. I have always been a hopeless romantic. I've
Yep.
always like, watched all the movies, like Disney ruined all of us. We were like, so I was like,
Yeah.
I want to capture love. Like if I can't have it for myself, like I want to capture it for other people.
Well, and honestly, going back to just who I knew of you as being friends in
Yeah.
high school,
Yeah.
we talked so much about relationships and
Oh my
boys.
gosh.
And
So much.
I mean, in depth, that was like whether it
We're
was
like
dance
kind of
or
boy crazy
that.
at certain points.
Of course. I mean,
When
who
I say
isn't
we,
at
I
that
mean me.
age?
I mean me.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, like who isn't
Yeah.
at that age, you know?
Oh.
But that was so much of what our conversations revolved around. And granted, that is that time of life too. But I think that coupled with the fact that you love creative outlets, like you can see where those forge together, where it's so organic and it's not just pick something up and learn a new skill. It's within you that then you come alive into something, you know, and like that investment to go somewhere that says, I'm going to put myself out there to invest in myself, I think it's huge.
Yeah, it really was. It is so weird to like look back and again see little God nudges throughout my life, because, the other thing is, I mean, I've shot weddings. I've now been in this wedding industry for almost a decade, which is wild to think. And right away, I started traveling. Destination weddings are the hardest to get into. And God like literally plopped me right into it just
Mm,
because my background, like I grew up traveling. Like
yeah.
traveling was my favorite thing ever. So it felt so natural.
Right.
And I love couples. I love love. Like again, like I know that sounds corny, but I genuinely just have always been like a hopeless romantic. And so
Yes.
to be able to capture, a couple's love story in a different place in the world, and I would have never met them if it hadn't been for this job. Like it's just the
Mm,
biggest honor. Um, yeah, and it's just so fun. So again, it's just wild to like look back at my life and like see how God was preparing for me for this the entire time.
yeah.
And it's just been such a wild and incredible journey. I love it.
How do you manage expectations in that? Because so I mean, everyone, well, I won't speak for everyone, but that hopeless romantic side that all those Disney movies sets us up for,
Yeah.
this is going to be the best day of your life.
Yeah.
And in a world that is also trended towards, it used to just be wedding portraits. Like you'll have 3 framed in your house and an album that sometimes you pull out, to
Yeah.
a full blown magazine
Yeah.
editorial per wedding. And then how does that get produced digitally, and how do you manage the expectations when you meet with potential clients?
Like if they're gonna have those photos, you mean?
Well, do you just do you feel that kind of pressure, or how do
Oh
you
my gosh.
enter into each event knowing that could potentially be the weight that's kind of on you?
Right. I think so. It's so funny because, like I said, I've been shooting weddings for nearly a decade. I can't even count how many weddings I've done now.
Yeah.
Um, and I always get nervous before a wedding. Like
Mm,
I think if you don't get nervous before a wedding, maybe, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like the day that I don't get nervous for a wedding is the day that like maybe I don't do it anymore. Just because
wow. Yeah.
it's like the adrenaline, the excitement. It's not like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
nervous, I don't think I can do this. It's just like this is a very powerful moment you're capturing, and
Yeah.
you should feel nerves
Mm,
because it's something like I mean, I don't take it lightly. Like the fact
yeah.
that, because like I was always the kid that like would go through shoe boxes and like look through my old parents'
Yeah.
photos. Again,
Yep.
another thing that God was like nudging me, where like
Right.
I just
Right. Right.
loved looking at old photos. And I think like these photos are going to be the things like what their kids are going to see. And
Yeah.
like, oh, one day, like I can't wait to like find somebody like daddy, like how he looks at her,
Right.
my mommy in this photo, like those things like hold a lot of weight. And so it's not like nerves in a sense of, oh, I don't think I can do this. It's more so of like, that's just such a huge honor. And I want to
Yeah.
come like knowing that I just want to do the very best job I can do. And also the fact that, again, weddings, you can plan, you could be the most type A bride
Yeah.
in the entire world. And if you are,
Right.
God love you. You side note, if you're type A bride, you still need a planner, please. I'm like
Yes.
looking out for you. Please just get a planner. But like there are still things that can go wrong, and you can plan and plan and plan. But what I always tell my brides is like, one, you have to remember the importance of the day. Like you have
Yeah.
hired vendors to do their job. So
Right.
like if the week comes and you're worrying about napkins,
Yep.
like maybe like kind of just take a step back and be
Yep.
like, you know what? In a year, this is not going to matter. Or like
Right.
6 months even,
Yeah.
I think it's just having that open communication with my brides of like, I want you to be so present.
Mm,
And so there are certain things that like I have to do. So for instance, like I go through, planners will do a timeline, I will do a photo timeline, and I walk through with the planner and the bride so that
wow.
everyone knows like where we're going to be. Because I
Yep.
think that's also like the biggest thing is people asking you questions like, where are we supposed to be? What are we supposed to be doing? And again, I think just open communication and managing expectations is so key.
Yeah.
Um, because again, it's like you're doing the best job you can do. If something doesn't work out, you just have to learn to adapt.
Mm,
And then one of the biggest things is like figure out the tea. You know what I mean? Like everybody's got crazy families, you know? It's very rare I come across a wedding where I'm like, wow, there's like no family drama. Everyone loves everyone. Like this is great.
Because people are people.
Yeah, people are people. And family photos is the most stressful part of a wedding day, like by far. Oh yeah.
Just because of the dynamics of everyone?
The dynamics, there's so many cooks in the kitchen. There's always one person that's like piping in and being like, wait, we need this photo. We need this photo.
Yeah.
And so I always let them know that. I'm like, I need to know, like, is there divorce in the families? Like, I need who cannot be with who. And I think doing your homework beforehand and kind of being a little nosy, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, be like, I'm not, asking you these questions just to like know more of, skeletons in your closet.
Right.
It helps me because again, anything that may happen, you're almost like a bodyguard for your brides, So like if someone has said something that upsets my bride, I don't want to ask them like, hey, what's wrong? Like I want to know kind of like, okay, she doesn't want to be around this person. So like kind of like defer them, like say, hey, can you go take a photo over there? It's just little things like that. I think over time in your career help everything. And then that way they can be present. And so like kind of getting back to your question of like managing those expectations is like trying to create an environment where your couples are so present, because if they are present, yes, it's me behind the camera, but it's them. Like, it's their connection. It's like them looking at one another. And I'm just there, like getting the different angles and like knowing their artistic vision and shot.
Right.
But if you have a couple that is just so present, you can tell when a couple is and is not. Like,
oh, absolutely.
For
you
sure.
can tell that in a selfie with friends who is like being forced to smile for this photo and who actually wants to capture the moment.
Right.
And on such a huge monumental day that is that, especially like you said, reminding of the importance of really what the wedding is about.
Right.
That makes room for you to be able to capture that magic that's in between, because they are just so present in the day itself.
Right. And I mean, obviously I always ask them like, are there any specific shots that you want? Send me a Pinterest board. It's funny because like I'll have people that will come to me and be like, I want this exact shot from Pinterest. And I'm always like, all right, we can try. But that person's body, the way that they move is going to be so different from the way that you move. Like you could try that and it won't feel comfortable and I can tell all over your face.
Right.
So I always say, send it to me. Like I'll try it out, but like we may find something that's even better and it's more suited for you guys, you know?
Right.
Because again,
it's
like
personal.
Right. You don't want to like look back at your photos and like in 20 years, be like, oh wait, who are those people? My job, like what I want so badly out of each wedding is to have at least like 10 images. I take like thousands. It's disgusting. But like when I am shooting during the day, I want to walk away with 10 images. This is like what I hold to myself.
Yeah.
That when I look at them, I can feel them, because that is what they are going to care most about. Like they may love the most like iconic like magazine where they shot it for sure. They'll be like, oh my gosh, look at my body. Like I look amazing.
Yeah.
But it's the photos that they look at and they feel that emotion. Those are going to be the ones that like you want to save forever and show your kids and all of this.
It's the stuff that lasts for generations. It's the stuff that is exactly what you said, going back through the shoebox and being able to see the feeling.
Yeah. Like I literally get chills like talking about it. Like I'm like when your daughter is like looking at, your old wedding photos, she's going to look at the ones that are magazine worthy and be like, whoa, like my mommy's so pretty. But then she's going to like look at the photos of, the two of you guys and be like, wow, like I can't wait to have that when I'm older.
A love like that, which is totally different than what lives for 24 hours on an Instagram story or, not that that's not fun.
No, those are amazing.
Knows. Yeah. I love to curate and do all of that.
I'm like, listen, put me all over Vogue. I will do all those shots. But like, at the end of the day, again, if I can just have in a gallery of like 1,000 images, if I can just have 10 that make me feel an emotion, then I feel like I've done my job.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think you make a good point in that, because I wouldn't say that, well,
I'm not going to say that that's not everyone's perspective, because everyone has their own artistry, creativity, way they handle clients, whatnot. But as you mentioned, even going to that first workshop, I guess, with Mary Lawlessly, she said not everyone should be. So what do you feel like stands out between your business and other photographers? Not that I think in anything, it's helpful to learn from other people, to shadow people and understand what their process is and take things away and be teachable. But also, everything these days feels like an oversaturated market. Like, starting a podcast feels like, well, there are a ton of people who have a podcast. What makes mine stand out? What is the purpose in me having one? Or anyone who posts links on Instagram, you're like, there's influencers with 3 million followers. What am I doing? Right. So what do you feel like is part of, in addition to shepherding a family and understanding dynamics, like what do you feel like is so core to Lyndsey and photography that really stands out from others?
Yeah, it's so funny that you asked that, because I kind of was like having to do a self audit at the beginning of the year, because I feel like the wedding industry this year has been so weird, and everyone's been feeling it, from like photographers, videographers. When I got my wedding dress, they even said that they noticed a shift.
Really?
Yeah, florists. Like, I don't know what's going on with the wedding industry this year, but it definitely sent me into a little bit of a panic and imposter syndrome and self-doubt, because, when you feel like you've been climbing and then things change, I feel like as well after COVID, oh my gosh, I felt like everybody came out as like a photographer. It was like
or a realtor.
Yeah, it was like all of these baby photographers, and they're good. Like, their photos are great on their Instagram, and they're like, "We'll shoot this wedding for free." And like, of course, if you're a bride who does it,
sure,
you see photos on their Instagram that look great, and then you hear free or a cheap, price, and you're like, yeah, like, duh.
Right.
And here I am at the beginning of the year. I set my pricing to like my goal that I've been working towards my entire career.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I hit this goal of charging, $10K for a wedding, and $10K is like not where I'm stopping. Like, I wanted to go up from there, and I hit $10K and I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening? And so of course I had imposter syndrome of like, what makes me different? Like, what makes a bride want to book me over somebody who like seems great and so much cheaper?
But she totally sees the value in it.
Right. Yeah. And I think it goes to one, and this is just like a message to brides, please don't choose a wedding photographer or really any vendor based on their Instagram. Like, oh my gosh, I always deliver 2 galleries, full galleries, so that they can see. Because at the end of the day, I've always said this, I feel like choosing a wedding photographer is just as important as choosing a wedding dress. Like, it has to be the perfect fit for not only the bride, but also for me. Like, if I had a bride come to me and say, I actually have had this before. I've had a bride come to me and want me to shoot their wedding, and then we got on a discovery call, and she was wanting overly posed and bright and airy photos. And I was like, have you seen my profile? That's not what I do. And this was years ago even. So like, I even edited way moodier back in the day. But I knew then, thankfully, because I had amazing mentors in my life, that I was just like, you have to let certain brides go. And I've done that throughout like the years of just saying like, I don't think we're a great fit. Or I just say conveniently I'm booked, because I'm like, I don't want to have that conversation. But like, I think I would be robbing a bride if I was just like in it for the money. If I was like, oh no, like, I'll do this, and it just like doesn't speak to me, or she wants something that I just don't think I can do. For instance, I will not shoot at the Treasury in St. Augustine. That's on my no shoot list, just because I am not a good photographer for that venue. There are photographers in St. Augustine that crush it in at the treasury, and they make it look so beautiful.
Right.
Kudos to them. Like, that is not my wheelhouse, you know? So I think it's like, I think that's what sets me apart is the experience of like knowing what I can and cannot do, and what I'm not going to just like book a wedding to book a wedding. If I feel like, if like, so for instance, if I got a bride that came to me and said like, I love your work, I want you to shoot in the treasury, I'd be like, listen, as much as, you know, I love that paycheck,
right,
I know experience tells me that like, I'm not the photographer for you.
Yeah.
This person is, you know? So I think
that's such a good word, like defining your core values and then also setting your limits. Right. And I think especially because I'd love to even know more about getting started and how you continued to grow into a business that could be completely independent and be, you know, a breadwinner and all that. But I think understanding your limits too, especially when you're building something, can feel like, how could I possibly say no to anything?
Right.
But it is almost growing in those things that you know you're gifted at or have a talent towards, that actually is what makes you thrive, because we can't all do it all. I mean, we all recognize our own limitations, whether that's personally, professionally, any of it. And being able to stick to that core value of who you really are and who you really aren't is actually what allows you to grow and thrive.
And I don't think that a lot of photographers, especially if you're just starting out, like, again, you could be amazing, but I think it's just time and experience gives you more of those core values that you are not willing to, like, just non-negotiables. And also just, I think personality plays a huge role in it. Like, I've always said, I don't think I'm the best photographer in the world. I don't think I'm the best editor in the world. Do I think I do those things amazing? Yeah. But like, what I know that I bring to the table and what is worth 10K plus is the experience and the personality that I bring on your day. Because really, I mean, if you think about it, the bride is with the photographer more than the groom on the wedding day. And especially
which is so wild.
It's wild. And so like, especially if you're not doing a first look, I'm like, yo, you gotta like me and I gotta like you, and we've got to be able to mesh well. That's why I think doing discovery calls are so important, because going back to, it has to be the perfect fit for the bride, because if you're hanging out with me for most of the day and you don't like me, or like you think I'm weird, or like, you know, whatever, it's just, I always say that like 50% of what I do, you know, is behind the camera and editing and all of that. But the other 50% is what the couple and their connection gives back to me. And the only way I can pull out their 50% is if I create an environment for them to thrive. And I feel like that is what sets me apart, is like, I can be thrown into any situation and I can walk away feeling like that couple will be my best friends for life.
Right.
And they are going to feel like I'm part of the family. And so that is like, I think it's just going back to like what sets me apart, of like the experience and my non-negotiables, and like knowing my wheelhouse, knowing when to hustle and like do just a job, but then also knowing like when my artistry is going to be compromised, and I'm not willing to just take a paycheck if it means I'm not going to be able to do the best I can. And then also just like, my personality and what I bring to the table, especially on a wedding day, you know?
You mentioned kind of some of your edits and the different perspective you've grown in and shot through. What inspires you? How do you continue to learn at your craft? Because with everyone, you can tell when they start something versus where they've started really entering into mastery level. And like what really inspires you, or how do you keep learning?
Oh my gosh, did you just say like I hit mastery level?
I would say so.
Oh my gosh,
definitely.
Thank you. No, it's funny because I feel like when I was coming up as a photographer, you know, when you are starting to look especially at like photographers and their work, photographers edit where kind of like where they started. For instance, in Florida, there is a lot more bright and airy photographers, because think of the environment.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like I grew up in Florida, but also in Scotland. Little fun fact for you guys that don't know me. So my mom's from Scotland, so I grew up over there as well. And it's very moody.
Yeah.
So I've always like had a blend where I'm not bright and airy. I feel like when I first started, moody and really filtery photography was like super in and trendy.
Yeah.
And now I feel like the things that are trending are more film-like photos, more natural, which is so funny because before it became a trend, I was really starting to already kind of go into that, where I was editing a lot differently, because my whole thing was like, if it was a bright sunny day out, I don't want my photos to look like it was a rainy day, you know? And if it was a moody day and it was rainy, I don't want my photos to look like it was a bright sunny day out.
Yeah.
So I've always been, I feel like, in between, where, you know, in Scotland, it's funny because if you look at a lot of work over in Scotland, there's a lot of moody photographers. And to them, I look like a bright and airy photographer. But then I'm like, wait, what? And then in Florida, I look like a moody photographer. So it's really all relative. One of my best friends, she is a photographer out in Las Vegas, and her editing style is very warm. But like not warm, like beachy warm, like desert warm, you know? And it's just funny to see how everyone kind of gets their inspiration from their environment. And so I feel like I pull inspiration from environment, but also just, you know, kind of like, which may sound funny, but kind of getting like into, you know, looking at movies, you know, music videos, magazines, like going through like Vogue and stuff like that. I think I pull a lot of inspiration out of movies. One in particular I'm super proud of. It was have you ever watched the movie About Time?
Yes.
Okay, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And there is a scene where they are going through their relationship, but through the tube in London, and they like kind of separate, and it's like different seasons of the year, and they like separate and like go there to their, you know, wherever their tube station's going or whatever. So I had a couple that eloped in Paris back in 2020. Oh my gosh, this is wild. I started my 2020 on like such a high. I was like, this is gonna be the best year yet. And then like, oh man. But yeah.
And then we were all humbled as a world.
We were all humbled. So I shot this elopement in Paris, and then they wanted to do portraits in London, which was amazing. So they were very much like free for all. We will do whatever. And so I was like having a ball with it. And one of the things I wanted to recreate was that scene About Time. Because I think, again, it's like, if you are a creative or a photographer, I think it's really important to pull inspiration outside of looking on Instagram. Like, I think so many people try to recreate the same thing over and over and over again because they see it's trending. And while I understand, and like I've even been sucked into that at few points in my career, what I found for, you know, me being the best creative I can be and feeling the most fulfilled I could be, you know, it's when I am not listening to the noise. It's like when I quiet the noise of what is going on Instagram, what everyone's posting, and not necessarily following trends. I think that's also super important to like recognize that it's a trend, and like if you want to dabble with it, but still make it your own, you know? And so like you know, pulling from movies has always just like been a fun thing for me. So I recreated the scene, and it was probably one of my favorite like memories I've captured for weddings before, because it was just so, it literally felt like the movie. Like we were going down into the tube, and it was rush hour. So there was people, like, you know, a ton of people going through, and there was this guy that was playing the guitar, And now they did an elopement, so they didn't have like the normal kind of wedding flow layout. And this guy playing the guitar, and I was like, go dance, like have your first dance. And like in the middle of this rush hour, like people going, like running through, and they're like, well, we can't dance. I'm like, you will never get this moment back in your entire life. Dance. And so they start dancing. The guy sees them, like her in a wedding dress. And so he starts playing a love song.
Yeah.
And I'm like bawling, like capturing this.
Yeah.
And it was just like being able to recreate that scene in about time.
So special.
And then like build upon that. So then like we had flowers, and I was like, let's go to Piccadilly Circus, which is like, if you've never been to London, it's like Times Square in London.
Yeah.
And there was a girl that was singing on like in the middle of the crowd. And I like walked up to her after her song, and I was like, can I make an announcement in your microphone? She was like, wait, what? Yeah, sure. And I was like, hey guys.
Sounds like you just going for it.
Yeah, just going for it. I was like, guys, this couple just got married. Can we get all the single ladies around? We're going to do a bouquet toss. And it was the most iconic. Yeah, it was. So it's like creating things like that. If you're so stuck in like trying to make it look exactly like a Pinterest photo or exactly like a photo that's trending on Instagram, you're going to miss these like spontaneous things that you can create. So yeah, I think it's just,
I think that's so important, because the two things I really hear you say, which I think is definitely true in my life too, is to be observant and then trust your intuition.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
I think my sister has to remind me a lot, like trust your gut, trust your intuition. And one of the pastors, speakers I follow, he always reminds people that when you are a believer, especially, your gut is the Holy Spirit. Like it's being like led within you. And what I think is so beautiful about that shoot specifically, but also what you're saying about your career, is be observant, pay attention to the things that excite you, that inspire you, that is not just, I need to do what they're doing, but then trust your intuition in the moment. Like, where's your gut leading you? Trusting that thing within you that says like, I feel motivated by this. And that is what's ultimately going to set you apart. And it doesn't mean I don't participate in trends or that sort of thing.
I mean, everyone does. Let's be honest.
Everyone does. Yeah. But it is that place that if you desire
want to stand out,
separate yourself, that like pay attention to the things that put you on fire, and then trust your gut and just go for it.
And I think always learning, like, I don't think that just because I've been a wedding photographer for almost a decade and have shot all over the world, like I don't think that I like stopped learning, you know? And I think this year has been particularly fun for me. And speaking about like God's timing of everything, like going back to when I said like weddings have been so weird this year. But I have been praying like for years to have time to slow down, to do the things. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird how that works? I'm like, God, you gave me my answer prayer. And I'm like, no, what? But I was like, you gave it right to me. But I have been praying for years, because one thing about me is that I don't know how to slow down. Like, if I feel like it's rest time, I'm like, what can I be doing? Like, what can I think I thrive in chaos and stress and anxiety.
Same.
And I'm always like, man, I can't wait to live in a world where like I don't feel stress and anxiety, but then like I create it for myself.
100%. Yep.
You know, so I just like, I love that toxic energy of mine. but no, so I have been praying for years just to have the space to rebrand myself, which I am doing right now. To rebrand myself, to challenge myself, to learn, to like be a student again. To, you know, cause I'm stepping into the luxury market, and that's a whole other thing. And, you know, talking about like having, you know, your stuff together, it's like, they're brutal. And so it's like trying to, you know, again, like you feel like you're a baby photographer again, like you're kind of, and it's exciting. If you let it be, and just like being like, just learning. So because weddings have been so weird this year, I have had the space in between other shoots that I've been doing to do these things that I have been longing for like, I'm talking probably like 5-6 years, like of just like, oh, one day I'd love to learn that, or one day I'd love, like, I've had my website for years and I've always wanted to redo my website and I just never had time. And now I'm like about to launch my new website. And so it's
huge. Yeah.
It's really exciting. But I think, again, it's like all in God's timing, because I feel like I wasn't prepared for what I wanted. And now I didn't know my voice. And now I feel like I know what my voice is and I'm stepping into that. And it is just always learning. I think that is the key to mastering something, is to never stop learning and pursuing excellence.
I totally agree. Especially when it's something that you're passionate about. There really is no end point. Like, I think there's amazing ways you can define success, but it doesn't mean that it's achieved. Like you can check it off, and I think constantly having that curiosity is super important.
Yeah.
Wow, so many good nuggets. And this is only part 1. I loved learning the ins and outs about wedding photography, as well as diving deeper into Lyndsey's intentionality behind developing relationships with her brides and capturing a feeling within every frame. It's been amazing to watch Lyndsey's business grow and develop over the years. Side note, we didn't even talk about the early shoots we did together for my early blog and merch for the Tim Tebow Foundation. I feel like I've almost had a glimpse of her business from the beginning, but it's been amazing to watch Lyndsey constantly grow and create new magic in each shoot. This is the perfect episode to share with the bride in your life or someone who's interested in developing their photography skills. Lyndsey offers so much encouragement. Please make sure you come back on Tuesday to hear part 2 of our conversation. We talk about her new skin business, what continues to motivate her in both photography and skincare, and she shares advice for people who are looking to start their own business. Oh, and also some love advice. We love to see it. There's so much more to gain from Lyndsey's story, so please set a reminder to come back on Tuesday. I'd love to hear what stood out to you from this episode. Leave a comment on Spotify or on the comments on Instagram. Make sure you follow Lyndsey on Instagram as well. You can find that link in the show notes or tagged on the Share Your Story Instagram. I'd love for you to follow me and the show while you're at it. Also, I'd love to invite you to subscribe, rate, and review this show. Every interaction helps this community grow. I am so very appreciative. Have an amazing weekend, friends. Cannot wait to share part 2 of my conversation with Lyndsey on Tuesday.